Cheyenne, Wyoming Territory, 1885. Dust swirled through the bustling frontier town, carrying whispers of judgment on its coattails. Bridget Vance stood on the wooden platform of the train station, her 20-year-old shoulders already bearing the weight of undeserved shame. Her honey-blonde hair was pulled back in a modest chignon, though several strands had escaped during the long journey west, framing a face too pretty for its own good. The pale blue calico dress she wore, her best and only good garment, felt suddenly inadequate as curious eyes assessed the newcomer. "This is a mistake," she whispered to herself, clutching the worn carpetbag containing everything she owned. Bridget had learned one harsh lesson in her short life. Trust was a luxury she could not afford. The frontier was no place for second chances or tender hearts. She had come west to disappear, to become as insignificant as the prairie grass that bent beneath the relentless Wyoming wind. Her uncle's letter had promised refuge after the scandal back east. Not that she had been guilty of anything beyond naivety and a misplaced trust in a man who had proven as substantial as morning mist. But in the small Pennsylvania town where she'd grown up, perception trumped truth, and her reputation lay in tatters. Now, as she surveyed Cheyenne's rough-hewn buildings and harder-looking inhabitants, Bridget wondered if escape was even possible in a territory where news traveled faster than stagecoaches. "Miss Vance." A gruff voice interrupted her thoughts. Her uncle's neighbor, sent to collect her, regarded her with thinly veiled disapproval. "Wagons this way. Your uncle's place is a good hour's ride." As they traveled the rutted road out of town, Bridget reinforced the walls around her heart. Survival out here meant isolation. She would keep to herself, avoid entanglements, and perhaps find peace in solitude. The vast openness of Wyoming might heal her, but she knew better than to believe people could. Owen Lawson never expected to find himself arguing with the entire town council of Cheyenne, yet here he was, hat in hand, passion overriding his natural tendency toward quiet reserve. At 25, he was younger than most men of influence in the territory, but the past 7 years working cattle had aged his soul while keeping his body lean and strong. "Gentlemen, we cannot turn away every person with a complicated past," Owen insisted, brushing back a lock of sandy brown hair from his forehead. "This isn't just about water rights anymore. It's about what kind of community we're building." The town's leading businessman, Harold Tate, leaned forward with a scowl that had intimidated many before Owen. "Your idealism is admirable, Lawson, but misplaced. We've worked too hard establishing Cheyenne as a respectable place. The last thing we need is Eastern scandal tainting our reputation." Owen's jaw tightened beneath light stubble. "So we condemn a young woman without hearing her side? Based on gossip carried 2,000 miles west." "The vote is final," Mayor Phillips announced, ending the discussion. "The Vance girl's character is questionable, and her uncle's land borders the watershed. We can't risk our reputation or our water supply on someone with her history." Frustration burned in Owen's chest as he left the meeting. His father had taught him that a man's worth came from standing up for what was right, even when it was unpopular. Since losing his parents to influenza 3 years prior, Owen had thrown himself into building up their modest cattle operation, finding solace in honest work and straightforward dealings with nature. People were far more complicated than cattle or weather. They disappointed you with their pettiness and prejudice. Yet something about the town's eagerness to judge a woman none of them had met struck him as profoundly wrong. Perhaps because he knew how quickly fortunes could change out here, how easily good people could find themselves at the mercy of others' charity or cruelty. The spring roundup was approaching, and Owen had no time for town politics or mysterious Easterners. He needed to focus on the herd, on survival. Romance and social causes were luxuries a young rancher couldn't afford, especially with drought threatening and cattle prices falling. That was the practical truth of the frontier. Bridget settled into a routine at her uncle's modest homestead. Calvin Vance was a taciturn man who seemed neither pleased nor displeased by her presence, merely accepting it as one more fact in a hard life. He had lost his wife to childbed fever years earlier, and whatever warmth he might once have possessed seemed buried with her. Town's hosting a spring social Saturday, he mentioned one evening, not looking up from his plate. "Good chance for you to meet folks." Bridget tensed. "I thought I might stay here, get the garden started." "Suit yourself." But isolation won't help rumors die down any. He glanced up finally. People talk more about what they don't see. Against her better judgment, Bridget found herself in a borrowed wagon the following Saturday, heading toward the gathering in the town hall. Her uncle's logic had prevailed. Facing the whispers directly seemed preferable to becoming the mysterious recluse who fueled even wilder speculation. She wore her blue dress again, freshly pressed, and had arranged her honey-blonde hair in a simple but elegant style. If she was to be judged, she would at least present herself with dignity. The knot in her stomach tightened as they approached the brightly lit building, music and laughter spilling from its open doors. The change was subtle but unmistakable. Conversations paused as she entered. Women gathered in tighter circles, glancing her way before turning their backs. Men assessed her with either inappropriate interest or obvious disdain. Bridget held her chin high, though her chest constricted with each painful snub. "Miss Vance," Mayor Phillips approached, his wife at his side. "We're surprised to see you here." "My uncle thought I should introduce myself properly," she replied, forcing a calm smile. "Indeed. Well," the mayor cleared his throat, "you should know our community values traditional virtue. We've worked hard to build Cheyenne's reputation as a respectable settlement." His meaning couldn't have been clearer had he asked her to leave outright. His wife didn't even attempt to hide her contempt, examining Bridget's modest dress as though looking for evidence of moral failing in its seams. "I understand," Bridget replied, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning her cheeks. "If you'll excuse me." She retreated to the punch table, fighting back tears. This had been a mistake. The frontier was supposed to be a place of new beginnings, but she had discovered it was merely a new venue for the same old judgments. She would finish her punch and find her uncle, then never subject herself to this again. Owen Lawson had arrived late to the social, having spent the afternoon pulling a heifer from a mud hole. Despite his hasty wash-up, his collar still felt too tight, his boots too stiff for dancing. He preferred the open range to these crowded gatherings, but his foreman had insisted he make an appearance. "Can't run cattle without neighbors willing to help when trouble comes," the old man had reminded him. He spotted her immediately, standing alone by the punch table, her back straight as a fence post despite the obvious discomfort in her eyes. Something in her determined dignity reminded him of a wild horse, proud even when cornered. When Mrs. Tate and her daughters deliberately moved away as she approached, Owen felt a flare of the same indignation he'd experienced at the town meeting. Without overthinking it, he crossed the room. "Evening, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "I don't believe we've met." Owen Lawson. Surprise flickered across her face, the first person all evening to approach her with genuine courtesy. "Bridget Vance," she replied, her voice soft but clear. "Miss Vance." He nodded. "I'd be honored if you'd consider this dance." Her hesitation was brief but palpable. "I'm not certain that would be wise, Mr. Lawson. I seem to be," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "somewhat controversial in Cheyenne." Owen smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "Fortunately, I've never put much stock in controversy or town gossip." The whispers intensified as Owen led Bridget onto the dance floor, but he met the stares of the townspeople directly, challenging their pettiness with quiet defiance. She moved with natural grace, though tension remained in her shoulders. "They'll talk about you now," she warned as they moved through the steps of a Virginia reel. "Guilt by association." "Let them," he replied simply. "I judge a person by their actions, not rumors carried on the wind." When the dance ended, Owen escorted her to the refreshment table, ignoring the pointed looks from Cheyenne's prominent citizens. "Your uncle's place borders the north section of my ranch," he explained. "We're practically neighbors." "Then you're either very brave or very foolish, Mr. Lawson," she said with the ghost of a smile. "Associating with me publicly." "I've been called both," he admitted. "But a man who fears whispers shouldn't live on the frontier. Too much real danger to worry about imagined threats." Something changed in that moment. A tiny crack in Bridget's armor of isolation. A questioning of her belief that the frontier held no place for second chances. When they parted ways that evening, she carried with her the unsettling possibility that she had been wrong about at least one person in Wyoming territory. The weeks following the social brought an unexpected complication to Bridget's plan of quiet solitude. Owen Lawson, it seemed, took neighborliness seriously. He arrived at her uncle's homestead with the excuse of discussing water access during the coming dry months, but lingered to help mend a broken wagon wheel. Later that week, he appeared with extra seedlings when he happened to be passing by. Each visit chipped away at her defenses. Unlike the men she'd known back east, Owen never pressed for personal details or made her feel she owed him anything. He simply offered kindness without expectation, a concept so foreign it left her constantly searching for hidden motives. "You don't need to keep checking on us," she told him directly one afternoon as he helped her uncle repair a leaking roof. "We manage fine." "Never suggested otherwise," Owen replied, hammering a shingle into place. "But out here, neighbors look after each other. Winter blizzards, summer drought, outlaw troubles. The frontier kills lone wolves pretty efficiently." Bridget studied him, trying to reconcile his genuine demeanor with her hard-learned distrust. "The town doesn't approve of your visits." "The town," Owen replied with a slight edge to his voice, "isn't always right." Her uncle, normally reticent, unexpectedly joined the conversation. "Lawson stood up for you at the town meeting. Only one who did, from what I hear." Surprise rendered Bridget momentarily speechless. "You argued with the town council? About me? Why would you do that when you didn't even know me?" Owen seemed embarrassed by her uncle's revelation. "Wasn't about knowing you specifically. Just couldn't stomach the unfairness. Judge a person after meeting them, not before." That evening, after Owen had left, Bridget found herself staring at the stars, wondering if perhaps her assessment of frontier justice had been too harsh. One man's kindness didn't change Cheyenne's rejection, but it suggested possibilities she had refused to consider. Spring roundup kept Owen busy from dawn until well past dusk. The cattle had weathered the winter fairly well, but drought conditions threatened the summer grazing, and every head counted if he was to meet his contracts. He told himself his frequent thoughts of Bridget Vance were merely concern for a neighbor, nothing more. Yet when Tate approached him during a supply run to town, Owen realized his actions hadn't gone unnoticed. "You're playing with fire, Lawson," the businessman warned. "That girl brings nothing but trouble. Eastern scandal has no place here, and those who embrace it will find themselves equally unwelcome." Owen's patience, worn thin from long days in the saddle, snapped. "Is that a threat, Tate?" "A friendly warning. The banker mentioned you're seeking a loan to expand your herd. Would be a shame if your associations affected business considerations." The implied threat was clear, but it only strengthened Owen's resolve. "I appreciate your concern," he replied coldly, "but I'll choose my own friends." That evening, frustrated and tired, Owen rode to the Vance homestead. He found Bridget alone, tending the kitchen garden in the fading light. "Your uncle around?" he asked, dismounting. "Went to check the irrigation ditch," she replied, brushing soil from her hands. Her hair was tied back with a simple ribbon, her face flushed from work. Something about her unguarded appearance made his chest tighten. "Probably shouldn't be here," he admitted. "Town's talking." "They were talking before you ever spoke to me," she reminded him, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "What's different now?" "They're threatening my business dealings." He hadn't meant to be so direct, but frontier life valued plain speaking. "Suggesting my association with you might make me a poor risk for loans." Bridget's face paled. "Then you should stop coming. I never asked for your help or friendship." "That's not why I'm telling you," Owen said quickly. "Just wanted you to understand what we're facing." "We?" She looked genuinely confused. "Mr. Lawson, there is no we. There's just you making a foolish social stand, and me trying to survive until this all blows over." Her words stung more than he expected. "Is that what you think this is? A social stand? What else could it be? You don't know me. You don't know what happened back east, whether the rumors are true." Owen stepped closer, frustration overriding his usual caution. "Then tell me, what happened that was so terrible the entire town of Cheyenne should shun you on principle?" The directness of his question seemed to catch her off guard. For a moment, he thought she might refuse to answer, retreat behind the walls she maintained so carefully. Instead, she set down her gardening tools and faced him squarely. "I was engaged to a man from a prominent family," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion he could see in her eyes. "I discovered he had gambling debts, significant ones. When I confronted him, he suggested I convince certain gentlemen to forgive the debts." Understanding dawned on Owen's face. "He wanted to use you to pay his way out of trouble." She nodded. When I refused and broke the engagement, he spread stories suggesting I had already done what he asked. His family had influence. My reputation was destroyed overnight. And no one stood by you? Owen asked, though he already knew the answer. People choose comfort over truth, Mr. Lawson. They sided with wealth and influence. Even my father suggested I had somehow invited the scandal. The pain of that betrayal still shone fresh in her eyes. So I came west, where supposedly the past doesn't matter, only to discover the rumors traveled faster than the train that brought me. Owen's hands clenched involuntarily. The man deserved a thrashing. A sad smile touched her lips. My brother thought so too. He confronted my former fiancée and was nearly killed for it. That's when my uncle offered to take me in, to protect what remained of my family from further consequences of my naivety. Your naivety? Owen's voice rose with indignation. You did nothing wrong. I trusted, she replied simply. On the frontier, that's enough to get you killed, or worse. The conviction in her voice made clear this wasn't merely something she believed. It was the foundation upon which she had rebuilt her life. Trust was a luxury she had abandoned, as essential yet impossible as wishing for rain in a drought. Not everyone will betray you, Bridget, he said quietly, using her given name for the first time. Perhaps not, she conceded. But I can't afford to discover who will and who won't. The price is too high. Before he could respond, her uncle's wagon approached in the distance. Owen knew this wasn't the moment to press further. I'll be gone for a few weeks, taking cattle to the northern pastures, he said. But this conversation isn't finished. Yes, Mr. Lawson, she replied, the walls visibly reassembling. I believe it is. Summer stretched across the Wyoming territory, bringing relentless heat and precious little rain. Owen's concerns about drought proved well-founded as streams dwindled and grass withered. The cattle drive to better pastures took longer than expected, with weakened stock moving slowly across increasingly barren terrain. During those long days in the saddle, Owen found his thoughts repeatedly returning to Bridget, her strength in the face of injustice, the sadness that lingered behind her smile, the wall she maintained not out of coldness but survival. He had always believed the frontier was about self-reliance, about needing no one. Yet something about her solitude struck him as profoundly wrong in a way his own never had. By the time he returned to his ranch in late July, Owen had made a decision that surprised even himself. He would court Bridget Vance properly, not out of pity or defiance toward the town, but because something in him recognized something in her. Two people who understood that the harshness of frontier life could either isolate you or teach you the true value of connection. His resolve was tested immediately upon returning to Cheyenne. Rumors had flourished in his absence, with speculation about his interest in the scandalous Eastern girl becoming a favorite topic at Tate's General Store. More troubling were the whispers about drought-stricken ranchers eyeing the water rights to Calvin Vance's property, and suggestions that the old man's dubious niece provided leverage for pressuring him to sell. Owen headed straight for the Vance homestead, only to find it oddly still in the afternoon heat. No smoke rose from the chimney. The garden Bridget had tended so carefully showed signs of neglect. "Hello, the house," he called, approaching cautiously. Calvin Vance emerged from the barn, his expression darkening when he recognized Owen. "Thought you might be the doctor returning," he said by way of greeting. Alarm shot through Owen. "Someone's sick. Bridget." The old man's gruff exterior cracked slightly. "Fever started 3 days ago. Doc says it's mountain fever. Been making the rounds with the drought." "How bad?" Owen dismounted, tying his horse to the rail. "Bad enough." Calvin's weathered face showed the strain of worry. "Town folk won't help much. Doc comes when he can, but—" Owen didn't wait to hear more, striding toward the house with purpose. "I'll stay. My foreman can handle things at the ranch." Inside, the small homestead was stifling despite open windows. Owen found Bridget in the single bedroom, her honey-blonde hair dark with sweat, her cheeks flushed with fever. She seemed smaller somehow, vulnerable in a way that tightened his chest painfully. For the next 3 days, Owen barely left her side. He bathed her burning forehead with cool cloths, coaxed water between her cracked lips, and spoke to her continuously, though she rarely showed signs of hearing him. When delirium took her, he held her hands to prevent her thrashing, murmuring reassurances as she battled invisible demons. "You're stronger than this fever, Bridget," he told her during a rare, quiet moment. Stronger than any of them know. Even you. On the fourth day, when hope began to waver, Owen found himself doing something he hadn't done since his parents' deaths, praying. Not the formal prayers of Sunday services, but raw, desperate bargaining with whatever force might be listening. I'll leave her be if that's what she truly wants, he promised the silent room. Just let her live to make that choice herself. That evening, her fever broke. Owen, dozing in the chair beside her bed, woke to find her watching him through clear eyes, weak but aware. You stayed, she whispered, her voice raspy from disuse. Relief washed over him so intensely he couldn't immediately speak. Course I did, he finally managed. Why? The simple question contained all the doubt she had carried since arriving in Wyoming. Doubt that anyone would stand by her without ulterior motive. Owen considered his answer carefully, knowing this moment mattered more than he could articulate. Because out here, we don't leave people to face wilderness alone. Not weather, not fever, not even small-minded gossips. A ghost of a smile touched her lips before exhaustion reclaimed her. This time, however, she slept naturally, healing rather than fighting. As Bridget recovered her strength over the following weeks, something fundamental shifted between them. The barriers she had maintained so carefully began to crumble in the face of his steady presence. She found herself watching for his visits, looking forward to their conversations as they sat on the porch in the cooler evenings. The drought's affecting everyone, Owen explained as they discussed the territory's struggles. But it's hit the smaller operations hardest. Like yours? She asked, noting the worry lines that hadn't been there before his cattle drive. We'll manage, he assured her, though his eyes betrayed concern. Your uncle's spring is holding steady, which helps. Bridget studied him. Is that why Mr. Tate and the banker have been visiting? They want access to our water. Owen's expression darkened. They want more than access. They're pushing your uncle to sell outright. With the drought, whoever controls water controls everything. And my presence gives them leverage, she concluded. Another reason for the town to pressure us. Your uncle won't sell, Owen said confidently. He's stubborn as they come. But he shouldn't have to bear this burden. My troubles shouldn't become his. The old guilt resurfaced, that her presence created difficulties for those around her. Owen reached over impulsively, taking her hand. Bridget, you're not a burden. You're the strongest person I've met out here. The unexpected touch sent warmth through her that had nothing to do with the summer heat. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe him, to imagine a life where connection didn't inevitably lead to betrayal. The moment shattered with the arrival of a rider from town, bringing news that would test that fragile hope. Mr. Lawson, the young man called, clearly uncomfortable with his errand. Bank's calling in your loan. Mr. Preston says you should come in tomorrow to discuss terms. Owen's face remained impassive, but Bridget felt his hand tighten briefly on hers before he released it. Tell Preston I'll be there, he replied evenly. When the messenger departed, Bridget turned to him, understanding dawning. This is because of me, isn't it? They're punishing you for helping us. This is business, Owen said firmly, though they both knew better. Droughts made everyone cautious with money. Stop protecting me, she insisted, anger flaring. I'm not so fragile I can't face the truth. They're using your association with me to pressure you, just like they're using me to pressure my uncle. Owen stood, pacing the small porch. It's not that simple. Tate and his friends have been trying to consolidate water rights across the county. Your uncle's spring is valuable with or without you here, and my expansion plans worried them before you arrived. But I've made it easier for them to act against you, she persisted. If you lose your loan, then I'll find another way, he interrupted with quiet intensity. Bridget, look at me. He waited until she met his gaze. I knew exactly what I was doing when I danced with you that night, when I defended you to the council, when I stayed during your fever. Not one decision would I change. The conviction in his voice silenced her protests. For the first time since arriving in Wyoming territory, Bridget allowed herself to truly see what stood before her. Not just a kind neighbor, but a man who had chosen her repeatedly, knowing the consequences. Why? She asked again, echoing her question from the sick room. This time, however, she needed the full truth. Owen knelt before her chair, taking both her hands in his. Because from the moment I saw you standing alone at that social, trying so hard to be invisible, yet holding your head high, I recognized something I didn't even know I was looking for. His thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. You believe the frontier taught you that trust gets you killed. I believed it taught me that a man needs nothing but his own strength. We were both wrong. The simple honesty of his words broke through her final defenses. Bridget felt tears gather, not of sorrow, but of release. As though chains she had carried for so long they had become part of her were finally falling away. I'm afraid, she admitted, the words barely audible. Not of the town or the gossip, but of believing in this. In you. I know, he said gently. But I'm not asking for blind trust, Bridget. Just the chance to earn it, day by day. When he left that evening, something had fundamentally changed. The wall she had built around her heart hadn't crumbled entirely, but a door had appeared where before there had been only stone. The following day brought crisis from an unexpected direction. Owen's meeting at the bank had gone poorly, with terms offered that would essentially force him to sell most of his herd at catastrophic losses. As he left the bank, fury barely contained, the town's telegraph operator flagged him down. Message came for Calvin Vance. The man explained, handing over an envelope. Figured you might deliver it, seeing as you're out there so often. Owen thanked him and tucked the telegram into his pocket, intending to deliver it that afternoon. Something about the operator's knowing look, however, made him pause midway to his horse. The man had clearly read the message, standard practice in small frontier offices, and seemed almost gleeful about its contents. Making a decision, Owen withdrew the telegram and unfolded it. The brief message confirmed his worst fears. Arriving September 2nd, stop evidence secured, stop prepare for trial, stop. Judge Harrison. Owen recognized the name immediately. Judge Harrison was a circuit judge with a reputation for harsh sentencing and unyielding adherence to Eastern moral standards. Evidence secured could only mean one thing. Someone had manufactured proof of Bridget's supposed indiscretions back east. Instead of heading to the Vance homestead, Owen turned toward the mayor's office, determination hardening his features. He found Mayor Phillips and Harold Tate in conference, their conversation stopping abruptly at his entrance. Gentlemen, Owen said coldly, holding up the telegram. I believe we need to discuss your latest attempt to drive the Vances from their land. Tate's expression confirmed Owen's suspicions before the businessman could compose himself. That's private correspondence, Lawson. A federal offense to interfere with it. Interesting that your first concern is the legality of my actions, not denying your scheme. Owen laid the telegram on the desk. You arranged for false evidence against Bridget Vance to pressure her uncle into selling during a drought when his water rights are most valuable. Mayor Phillips cleared his throat uncomfortably. Now, Lawson, business is business. The girl's reputation was already questionable. We simply exploited it, Owen finished, and invented evidence to threaten her with public humiliation or worse. The town needs that watershed, Tate said bluntly, abandoning pretense. Vance is one old man with no heirs. The greater good. Don't speak to me of greater good while plotting to destroy an innocent woman. Owen cut him off. Here's what happens next. This scheme ends now. The judge receives a telegram explaining the misunderstanding. The loan terms offered to me return to reasonable conditions. And Miss Vance receives a public apology from the town council. Tate actually laughed. Or what, Cowboy? You've got no leverage here. I have this, Owen replied, withdrawing a second paper from his pocket, his own hastily written account of their scheme, which goes to the territorial governor and 3 newspaper editors I know if anything happens to the Vances or their property. I wonder how investors back east would feel about putting money into a town run by men who manufacture evidence against innocent women for financial gain. The mayor's face paled. You wouldn't dare. It would damage the whole town, not just us. Try me, Owen said simply. I've got nothing left to lose. You've seen to that. The standoff stretched for a long moment before Mayor Phillips broke the silence. Perhaps we've been hasty. A misunderstanding, obviously. Obviously, Owen agreed, his voice hard as winter ice. Send the telegram canceling the judge's visit today. I'll expect the loan paperwork revised by tomorrow. And the apology? Tate asked, unable to hide his distaste. Town social this weekend. Public acknowledgement that the rumors were investigated and found baseless. Owen headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. If I hear one more word against Bridget Vance from anyone in this town, I'll know where it started. and I won't be so reasonable next time." The threat hung in the air as he departed, his victory tempered by the knowledge that he had just made powerful enemies. But for the first time since returning to Cheyenne, Owen felt something like peace. He had chosen his side in this frontier battle, and win or lose, he would face the consequences standing beside the woman who had somehow become the center of his world. Bridget noticed the change in town immediately. The hostile stares had transformed to curious glances. The deliberate snubs became awkward acknowledgments. When Mrs. Phillips herself approached at the general store with stiff but clear overtures of friendliness, Bridget's suspicion flared. Something's happened. She confronted Owen that evening as they walked along the creek that marked the boundary between the Vance and Lawson properties. "The town is suddenly different." Owen hesitated, clearly debating how much to tell her. "No more protecting me," she reminded him. "Whatever you've done, I deserve to know." He nodded, conceding the point, and explained everything: the telegram, the confrontation, the threats exchanged. With each revelation, Bridget's eyes widened. "You risked everything," she said when he finished. "Your standing in the community, your business." "Not everything," he corrected gently. "Not what matters most." The implication hung between them, too significant for casual acknowledgement. Bridget turned away, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his actions and what they revealed about his feelings. "My uncle's spring isn't worth all this trouble," she said finally. "This was never about water rights," Owen replied. "It was about power. Their belief they could bully good people because of wealth or status, or lies told often enough they start sounding like truth." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "And it was about you, Bridget. About proving that one person standing up for what's right can change things, even out here, where we pretend only strength matters." "Is that what you've been trying to show me?" she asked. "That the frontier isn't just about survival?" "The frontier teaches us what matters," he said simply. "Strips away pretense until we see clearly. For some, that reveals only selfishness. For others, it reveals courage," she finished, finally turning back to him. "Like yours." "Like yours," he corrected. "Surviving what you did, starting over, facing down a town's judgment every day. That takes more courage than confronting a few bullies in an office." The setting sun bathed the landscape in golden light, transforming the drought-stressed grass into a sea of amber. In that moment, Bridget saw Wyoming not as the harsh wilderness she had first encountered, but as a place of stark, honest beauty, much like the man standing before her. "The town's hosting another social Saturday," Owen said, breaking the charged silence. "The mayor plans to publicly clarify the misunderstanding about your past." "I'm not sure I want to attend another Cheyenne gathering," she admitted. "I'd understand if you refused." He hesitated, then added softly, "But I'd be honored to escort you, if you'll have me." The formal phrasing made her smile despite herself. "As a neighbor? Or as something else?" "As whatever you'll allow," he answered honestly. "I think you know how I feel, Bridget. But I meant what I said about earning your trust, not demanding it." In that moment, looking into eyes that had never once lied to her, Bridget made a decision that contradicted everything she thought the frontier had taught her. She stepped forward and placed her hand against his cheek, feeling the warmth of his skin, the slight roughness of end-day stubble. "Ask me properly, Owen Lawson," she whispered. "What you really want to ask." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a hope so naked it nearly broke her heart. He took her hand from his face and pressed it between both of his. "Miss Bridget Vance," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion visible in every line of his face. "Would you do me the great honor of allowing me to court you? Not as a neighbor or friend, but as a man who believes his life would be immeasurably blessed by your presence in it." Joy, an emotion Bridget had nearly forgotten, bubbled up from some long-sealed chamber of her heart. "Yes," she replied simply. "I would like that very much." His smile transformed his entire countenance, and when he leaned down to kiss her, Bridget met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, reverent even, yet it contained a promise of deeper passion, a frontier love strong enough to withstand drought, gossip, and the harsh realities of Wyoming territory. The town social that Saturday marked a turning point. Mayor Phillips delivered his promised clarification, awkwardly explaining that unfortunate rumors about Miss Vance had been thoroughly investigated and found baseless. Though clearly coerced, The public statement effectively reset Bridget's standing in the community. More significant was her appearance on Owen Lawson's arm, their courtship now openly acknowledged. Some townsfolk remained coolly distant, but others, particularly those who had suffered under Tate's financial maneuverings, approached with genuine welcome. "Never thought I'd see Harold Tate publicly back down on anything," one rancher commented to Owen. "Whatever you did, it's about time someone stood up to that bunch." As autumn painted the territory in russets and golds, the drought finally broke. Rain fell in gentle, soaking patterns that revived the land without causing the flash floods so common after prolonged dry spells. Owen's cattle regained condition, and the bank, under scrutiny from both Owen's threats and a timely visit from the territorial banking examiner, revised his loan terms to reasonable conditions. For Bridget, the external changes paled compared to the internal transformation. Each day with Owen chipped away another fragment of the protective shell she had built around her heart. Their courtship progressed with frontier directness, honest conversations, shared work, and increasingly passionate expressions of affection. "I never thought I'd find this here," she admitted one evening as they sat on her uncle's porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains. "When I came west, I believed I was retreating from life, not finding it." Owen squeezed her hand. "The frontier strips us down to essentials, shows us who we really are and what we truly need." "And what do you need, Owen Lawson?" she asked, though she already knew his answer. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "You," he said simply. "A partner to build with, to face whatever comes. Someone to remind me why all the struggle matters." The words she had once feared now filled her with certainty. "I love you," she said, speaking the phrase for the first time. "Not because you defended me or stood against the town, but because you saw me, truly saw me, when no one else would look past rumors and assumptions." His kiss was different this time, claiming rather than questioning, certain rather than tentative. Bridget responded with equal passion, the last of her reservations dissolving like morning mist under the Wyoming sun. 2 weeks later, Owen proposed properly, with a small diamond ring that had been his mother's. They married in October, with Calvin Vance giving his niece away and several neighboring ranchers attending despite lingering disapproval from the town's elite. "Don't suppose we'll ever be truly welcome in Cheyenne society," Owen acknowledged as they drove to his ranch, their ranch now, after the simple ceremony. Bridget laughed, the sound carrying freely across the open prairie. "I've discovered something about frontier society, husband. It rebuilds itself with each generation, each new arrival. The Tates and Phillips may rule today, but tomorrow belongs to those who understand that strength comes from standing together, not standing apart." As winter settled across Wyoming territory, the newlyweds created their own society of two, expanded occasionally by visits from Calvin or neighboring ranchers who valued Owen's fairness more than town gossip. They worked side by side, weathering the harsh conditions with shared determination and warming the cold nights with passionate affirmation of their bond. Spring brought renewal in more ways than one. The land greened early, promising good grazing for the expanding herd. And Bridget discovered she was carrying their first child, due in late autumn. "A child born to this land will never doubt they belong here," Owen said, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Not like we did at first. Because they'll know from the beginning what took us so long to learn," Bridget agreed. "That the frontier isn't about isolation. It's about discovering what truly matters, and whom you can truly trust." As summer approached again, marking a year since Bridget's illness and their first acknowledgement of deeper feelings, the couple stood together on the porch of their ranch house. In the distance, cattle grazed on abundant grass, testament to their survival of drought and financial threats. Closer, a garden flourished under Bridget's care, no longer merely functional, but beautiful as well, with flowers interspersed among the vegetables. "When I first arrived in Wyoming territory," Bridget reflected, "I believed the frontier had taught me that trust was a luxury I couldn't afford." She leaned against her husband, his arm automatically encircling her waist, hand resting protectively over their growing child. "I was wrong. The frontier taught me that trust given to the right person isn't a luxury. It's the only thing that makes survival worthwhile." Owen kissed her temple gently, and those gentle words healed what a town's cruelty tried to break. Together they watched the sunset paint the endless Wyoming sky, secure in the knowledge that they had found in each other not just survival, but belonging, the true promise of the American frontier.